Welcome in to a special episode of What's Right with Nick Wright presented by Boost Mobile. This is, I think, our first ever Friday night record. And as the audience who watches Colin Cowherd's podcast knows, I don't have many absolute adamant rules in life, but one of them is if I'm doing a podcast at night, I'm drinking during it. So I have a glass of wine, and I also have another rule, which is, and this is a new rule, but I've decided I'm leaning into it because every once in a while people kind of like invite themselves on the pod. They're like, hey, I could come on the pod. And I've never really found the right way to be like, we don't do guests, because they know we have done guests because Lil Wayne was on the pod like our 5th or 6th episode ever. But he's the only guest we've ever had. We've had co-hosts. Danny Parkins has co-hosted, Bomani Jones has co-hosted, but never a guest. So new official What's Right with Nick Wright podcast rule. If you are not in a GOAT discussion in your field, can't come on the pod, which is why I am allowed to bring on our second official guest ever, Poker Hall of Famer, the GOAT poker commentator, my good friend Nick Schulman. Nick, you and I have known each other for a bit. We've always talked about doing some broadcasting together. We kind of did broadcasting together at the World Series, but it was just we were on the same broadcast, but we never shared a microphone. We're finally doing it. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, dude. Thanks for having me. I mean, for it to be Wheezy and then me, obviously, I'm very honored.
So, all right. So for the What's Right audience that isn't as familiar with poker, I'm going to quickly give Nick's resume. He's going to get embarrassed by it. I'm going to do that just as an introduction and then talk about what we're going to do. Nick's been a professional poker player for the better part of 20 years. Best I can tell, weeks after turning 21, you hit what is to this day your biggest tournament score ever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to start.
Yeah.
Won the Borgata, one of the Borgata tournaments for about $2 million. Since then, has won 7 World Series of Poker bracelets across a bunch of different disciplines, and was this year's sole inductee, at least for a little bit, to the Poker Hall of Fame. And in his first year of eligibility, he is also the voice of High Stakes Poker and the voice of a ton of poker that people watch either on Poker Go or on stream, wherever, and is also a diehard boxing fan. And he won't say this, I consider boxing expert. Also sneaky, probably pool and golf expert, but there's not as much of marketing for that. So we're going to talk some boxing on the back end and a ton of World Series on the front end, with our second guest ever after what was. So let's just start right here, Nick. In the 20 years you've been, a professional poker player for around 20 years. Was this the most historic World Series you can remember?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. The Grinders win. I feel you'd have to go back to Stu Unger, who I would think some of your listeners may have heard of, even if they don't follow poker, but he's considered probably one of the 5 to 10 best no-limit tournament players ever. But he had a very historic win, and I would say this is the biggest one since.
So I'll go. I'm gonna off the top of my head try to give the Stu Unger quick story, and then we comp it to this. Stu Unger won the main in 80 and 81. I might be off by a year, and then came back in the late 90s after was dealing with a lot of personal demons. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Came back and won the main again to become the only, right, 3-time main event champion, certainly the only of anything close to the modern era, and I think the only 3-time main event champion. Michael Mizrachi, there's the main event that even people that aren't poker fans, they know what that is. That's the one Chris Moneymaker won. That's the one that used to be on ESPN for hours and hours and hours. There are a bunch of other tournaments at the World Series, and the one that the pros look at as not only the crown jewel, but also attainable, because the main event's got thousands of people, is the Poker Players Championship. That's changed over the years. It used to be horse, then it was 8-game, 9-game, but it's the the crown jewel of it. I think there has been 20 poker players championships over there's been one the last 20 years. Mike won it in 2010. Then he won it twice more. And then he won it again this year. And so let's go there before we even get to the main, because that's what makes, and if people don't know, he then went on to win the main event. So he won the Poker Players Championship, won the main event, and the reason I'm saying to Nick that Nick was the only Hall of Fame inductee, the Hall of Fame made an exception and just snap inducted Mike into the Hall of Fame after winning the main. But let's go back a few weeks if you can. When you're following, first of all, you played the PPC, I assume. So you were in it. Were you ever in this tournament at the same table as Mike?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk about this, because this is what I want to get into. Because there seems to oddly be a bit of a debate over Michael Mizrachi. Is he actually good? And which seems like the dumbest fucking thing ever, but it's some really like good poker players like actually not that good. When you're at the table with Grinder, what is he doing differently, in your opinion, in that tournament specifically, that has led to him having such outrageous success at it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not the easiest one to answer, but I would say it's kind of multifold. So the PPC is a collection of some of the best players in the world at overall poker. So there's no limit, which kind of everybody plays, so to speak. It's the most popular game. And the PPC is a collection of a variety of games, both limit and big bet. The Grinder will get in there with some German specialist, somebody like me, somebody like a Rasty or a Seaver, Phil Ivey, it doesn't matter. And just, for lack of a better, kind of hold them in contempt. He's sitting there like he's the shit, and he is. And then he has this habit of just always having an enormous chip lead. And I think it's a combination of truly achieving mastery and gauging your table image and then switching it up. So he's sneaky. He's got a lot of hustle. He acts like he's crazy. Then he switches gears and he's playing kind of tight. Then he is crazy again. And just an unbelievable ability to read people in high pressure moments. And of course, a little luck as well.
So, all right. So it would seem almost irrational that I could see how someone with his style might have a ton of success or disproportionate success at big field, no limit tournaments, because he's going to get the most, from an amateur. He's going to, like you said, leverage his image. But the PPC is the opposite of that. It is a small field compared to the others. There's, like you said, there's not a lot of no limit variance. So, you know what I mean? And again, I am the definition of an amateur player, but I do play all of the variants. It feels like you shouldn't be able to leverage the things that he would be great at in a deuce to seven triple draw game, against people like you that are just, there's not going to be a lot of egregious mistakes made in the PPC, and yet he has found himself the winner 4 times. And so is there something specific about his style that you think leads to that? And I guess the follow-up would be, do you think we're going to see people try to mimic it, emulate it, be like, if that's what works, why can't I do that?
Yeah, it's interesting. We all of the sort of, I don't want to say conventional pros, but the ones who kind of think in a similar regard about game theory or whatever. Whenever we watch this shit, we're all, remember when Shooter McGavin was in the woods, practicing the Happy Gilmore swing?
Yeah.
It's a little bit there's definitely those moments, but he's just really doing his thing. And one thing with the limit games and everything within the confines of a tournament, especially a mixed game tournament, there's different strategies and approaches and he just has it. I mean, I don't think we were talking about this your last night in Vegas, but it's pretty unprecedented for a sport to just induct to just put someone in the Hall of Fame after an accomplishment. I don't,
Yep.
usually you still go through the process, but after the main and his fourth PPC, the Hall was just like, that's it. It's just, he's in, it's pretty wild.
Well, and so again, this is, we're going to have two different audiences watching this. We're going to have the audience that's never watched a single episode of What's Right, but see that you're on here and they tune in. So for those people, there's going to probably be a little more recap than needed. And then there's people who are not real diehard poker fans, but watch the channel. And so for those folks, I'm going to kind of give, a more detailed lead up to what the other people know already happened. So he wins the PPC after, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or dismissive to Mike at all, but it's fair to say, he has not been, at the top of the poker world over the last few years.
He's hardly even played the last few years.
Right. So he kind of wins the PPC out of nowhere. He gets the final table pretty quickly, gets a nice chip lead, wins that. And if he then, spent the rest of the series at Spearmint, he would have still probably made the Hall next year. Or, your dear friend and our mutual friend Scott Seaver would have something to say about that and whatever. But when he won that for the fourth time, if people don't know, a couple years ago, Brian Rast won it for the third time. And a lot of people thought that's what cemented Rast getting in the year he did. So if he had just won the PPC, it's like, wow, one of the greatest accomplishments in poker history, winning this thing a fourth time. He then enters the 10,000 person main event and wins that too, which it is not at all prisoner of the moment or hyperbolic to say, if you think the greatest accomplishment in the history of poker is what Mike did over the last month, you have a very strong argument for it. Winning the hardest tournament and then the most prestigious within a month. So you had the opportunity, as I did, but as I guess the world did, of seeing his cards basically throughout the final four tables of the main. And at the very end, I know, he won a bunch of all-ins in a row. I get that. That's a part of poker. But at what point did you think it was realistic that he was going to win it? And then, I'll just ask that, then I'll get to the other question.
I guess the final three tables, when he was still there, when he spun back from a few bigs, it started, obviously that's crazy momentum. It started to feel like you're watching the greatest dice rush ever. It started hitting like minute 90 of a guy still holding the dice, where all of us as gamblers, this is a crazy life. And Mike has really lived the life. So whenever we see one of our own go on a crazy rush, we all just kind of, and that's not downplaying what happened, because of course a lot of skill along the way, but it was just like everything he was touching was turning to gold, and it felt almost spiritual. It felt like there were factors at play that were beyond, and I guess the final three tables and two tables really started to feel like he's just going to win. I mean,
all right, so can we talk about the spiritual and the factors at play thing for a second? Because I've never talked to you about this. Because there is kind of out of nowhere a different debate, I guess, going on in the poker world, spurred by, my pal, our mutual friend, Lucky Chewy, who's like, hey, it's actually like, I don't want to misstate his premise, but it's like kind of the secret. He calls it Kimsit, which is like what you believe and what you feel can actually impact the universe around you. And I don't think he's arguing or anyone's arguing that once the cards are dealt, what you feel actually can change what card is coming on the turn, but that you can plug in almost to the feelings of the universe, and that is a different edge you can get rather than just playing perfect. You're someone who is as studied as anyone there is with the actual math and the theory of poker. But you're also, as you mentioned before, a gambler and have been whether it's pool or cards, or you've been a gambler for years, for your whole really life, which makes me think you have seen enough kind of spooky things to make you at least wonder how much, like, is that just randomness, or how much of it is that some people are, whether they know it or not, kind of tapping into something that other people can't tap into?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm a God-fearing man, but I don't believe God is sweating the mane or saying today, it's grinder time. Let's just
right.
But I do think that if you flow kind of like yourself and you're humble or supremely confident, whatever, but if it's real and it's authentic and you kind of leave it all out there in a way, it's sort of little building blocks for good things to happen. And I don't think we'll ever see showmanship like we saw at this degree, or ever see a guy just so free out there in such a crazy spot. And Pete, like the lore of his partying and late nights and stuff, they are real. Would that work for most people? It would not. 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, that would be sort of self-destructive behavior. But every once in a while, a John Daly type character comes along. We've seen it in all sports. Even Jordan, we've seen him like partying, and there's others. Some people just kind of flow like that. The grinder was out there doing his dance moves. He's doing the spins. We're never going to see a pot go check, 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 small bet, pumping up the crowd, bluffing. We're never going to see this again. And it's just to watch a guy kind of totally know who he is, just be himself for real. It's a crazy pressure cooker moment. And this guy he's just built different. So spiritual stuff aside, like, it just felt like we're watching a guy who kind of creates his own luck out there in a way, who's lived the life, and it's all just happening, man. He's just hitting every card.
Right. And if people haven't seen it, if you're not a poker fan, first of all, the final table is quick. And it wasn't, and this was the part that I found so truly unbelievable, and I mean that in the literal sense. Like, it was hard to believe. There was an instance for you, for example. I don't know if it was the 25K last year, some big tournament you won. You had this huge chip lead late, and you were, but there were still a lot of people left. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah,
you were
it was
able
the 25K last year.
Okay. So we have seen instances where one guy comes into the final table with all the chips and can really leverage that chips lead because people are trying to ladder, and it's like, okay, it is going to take a catastrophe for this guy not to win it. The question is, who's going to finish second? Grinder came into the final table second in chips, but 30 minutes into the final table was average in chips. Like, it was not that he was able to just run everyone over, and then he went on, I mean, it's fair to call it an absolute unbelievable sun run, but also one that, like you said, he did do the pump the crowd up once as a bluff, but he did it earlier in the tournament when he had it. And he is talking and having fun and leaning over. And if people haven't seen it, he has literally a roulette wheel tattooed on one arm, the ace on the other arm. I think 4's on it. If you were making a Hollywood movie and said, hey, cast a stereotypical gambler, lifelong gambler, you could do a hell of a lot worse than just what Mike is. And the other thing you said is, this is not Nick Schulman talking. This is Nick Wright talking. He was out all night a lot of these nights the night before, partying before some of the biggest spots of his life. And I don't know where we were in the tournament, but it was when the Tajin guy or whatever his name was, said, and this is a quote, "I might stick my dick up your nose" to a different player. He and Grinder were both drinking during play. It felt very Farha and Scotty Wynn. This whole thing felt like a throwback, which I think was just fun to see, at least for me. I don't know how you interpreted it.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, it was incredible to watch. And, I'm sentimental about these guys. Like, before I played poker, I was a pool room guy. And pool room people, they just go to the pool room every day. And you see the same guys. Spanish Eddie is over there. Texas Pete. Fucking, like, it's just the same dudes in there every day. And there's a gambling subculture, and, that shakes out how it does. Mike has been around for 20 years. He's the real deal. He's a real gambler through and through. And, people forget too, his WPT run, the World Poker Tour, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And I know a lot of your listeners aren't poker players, but that's the kind of poker where you see a lot of random different dynamics and stuff that you see in the main. It's why the main event is the greatest tournament in the world, because you see top pros play with amateurs, and those dynamics are just so incredible. Poker's a really interesting game where anybody can kind of win on any given day, where that's not going to happen in any other sport.
Other sport, correct.
And Mike on the WPT was very dominant. He had a legendary run where you could really make an argument that he was one of the best, if not the best, no-limit players in the world before computers kind of entered the foray. So for him to have this happen post, it's really beautiful to watch, and he deserves it. I mean, people like to define what deserve means, but to me, a big part of it, at least, is reps, heart, and just showing up. If you just show up day after day, good shit happens sometimes. It doesn't need to be, people like to argue, but I've worked harder, or they define what it is. But a lot of these guys, they just stay in the gym or what have you. They stay in the Rhino, like whatever it is. All jokes aside, this guy's lived a life, traveled around, played so many tournaments. And when the rush really started happening, a lot of us got emotional, because it's just like, it's just one of those things that if you've lived this life and you felt the downs, which all of us have, the downs in gambling are no joke. I mean, I know, tons of people listening gamble and bet on sports and whatever it is. They go to the casino, and you guys know how it is. When it's not going well, it's a crippling feeling. The sadness sets in, the whole thing sets in. Yeah. And the Grinders felt that a million times. So to see this, it just was unbelievable.
All right, folks, something special is about to happen in the Big Easy. UFC 318 is coming to New Orleans, and it's absolutely stacked. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, has all the action you need. We're talking Holloway Poirier 3, the trilogy, BMF's title on the line. But more than that, this is Dustin Poirier's last fight. That's it. The final walk, one of the all-time greats. You taking Holloway's volume or Poirier's power? If you've never bet UFC with DraftKings, don't worry. Just pick something simple like a fighter to win and make your pick. That's it. Straightforward, easy. Check this out. New customers who bet just $5 get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Huge boost to get started. Do not miss Poirier's final fight. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use code Wright. That's code Wright for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. So there's a couple other kind of specific things I want to talk to about him. Then I'll talk before we get to boxing, kind of bigger picture World Series things. there were a few late in the tournament, a few moves he made or bets he made that were, and I am kind of cribbing, some notes, some things I've heard from either you or other true experts of the game. So I'm not trying to present myself as the expert on this, but were
You are good.
objectively.
You are good though, by the way. I'm sure a lot of
Oh,
people don't know you like really play, but Nick plays for real, so it's
well,
cool.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I think I am a very good amateur. You know what I
Yes.
mean? But it's just a
Yes.
totally different world than being anything close to a pro. And so what I'm saying here is not, my knowledge, so to speak. But there were a few things he did that were objectively wrong in theory. And you were in the booth. I know for at least one of them where I don't know. I just think he bet like 40 million with queens when like the
Yeah.
bet to him was 11 million, or it was something. I might butcher it a bit if that was what it was. But you and I think that's one of the reasons some of the, again, my words, not Nick's, more smug and also less accomplished pros are like, this guy's no good. Just lucky. We talked more about this later, and do you think there was maybe more of a method to the madness for some of this stuff than was originally recognized?
I'm really a romantic with this stuff, so I will my instincts that night, I got in some really ugly fights with some of my young homies who are very
Really?
theory based, who have not had the accomplishments of this guy, who were off to the races with the like, it's all luck, they weren't getting behind it. And for me, it really made me sick, like, so we got in some, I mean, when I say ugly, like it's
Yeah,
all good. Yes, I do think there was some methods to the madness. Also think it's okay to objectively disagree or say some of these plays he made maybe weren't totally for choice, and it can still be just a part of the story and a part of the win. When he went all in with queens, we spoke about this. At first, I didn't like it. And it's such a good hand. In poker, sometimes you have a hand that's so good, generally queens, kings, or aces, that the strategy most professionals would try to adopt is to raise an amount where maybe you get some action. This is a top few percent hand, and we want action from worse hands. Grinder's just slamming all in, drink, pumping up the crowd. And it's like, yo, bro, Mikey, baby, take it easy. Like, you got ladies here. But then I started to think he does have complete control over this situation outside of a few players who were providing resistance and were playing great. Leo Margette's played great. Kenny is a great player. And big respect to all of them who made it
yeah.
down there, because you can't know how deep someone is kind of in the zone in that moment, or what they're really seeing through their eyes. So it's easy to say they're bad and these guys are good, but it's more complicated. But I started thinking maybe he feels he has so much control over the table and he's seeing things so well, because if you really watched him maneuver, I've never seen a pro kind of wear their heart on their sleeve the way he was, where he's like bending over, he's shuffling the chips, he's looking at them. It's almost like he's about to fold. Then he looks at him again, something else hits him, he's all in. Every move he made worked so well. And I think just he was reading them so well and felt he had such control. Maybe he was trying to kind of avoid variance in some of these spots where he made these huge all ins. But without being too long winded about it, I do disagree with some of the plays he made. You're not going to play on TV for 20 hours and,
Of
and get them
course.
all right anyway. But the overall performance and the art that he created and just the way he went about his business, it all just came together.
No, and this is where I am, and this is kind of a more big picture sports discussion. But I know you're very, I think, adamant that poker should be considered a sport, that it is a sport, and that so I think that it fits in this. there have been a few types of sports discussions that, in my opinion, used to be done objectively terribly and wrong, and now we have overcorrected. And so there once upon a time, like in baseball, if you had a 1.4 ERA, but you had a 7-9 record, it's like, well, not winning the games. Like,
he's just a loser. He just doesn't have it.
He just doesn't have it. Like, that was objectively wrong. We've gotten smarter about that. And a big part of that has been the general philosophy of process over results. Like, you know what I mean? Was the process correct? That matters more than the results. And in general, I think that is the right way to look at things. Where I think sports as a whole, and this is an example where we have overcorrected, is there seem to be a subset of folks who think not process over results, process only and fuck the results. I don't care what the results are. And another thing that comes to mind, and I thought you did a great job with it, was when Phil Hellmuth was doing the heads up duels, of which I was one of the victims. And he comes back from 97 million to 3 million against Daniel, then beats him again, then beats him again. Then he clocks Antonio in 2 out of 3 matches, gets a little lucky in a third. When he just kept winning, and obviously has these insane results at the World Series. And some people are still like, kind of think he sucks. And so like, to me, there has to be some humility in, maybe I don't understand why what someone is doing works, but if the results become so overwhelming, I have to recognize it's not dumb luck. There is a process to it, just a process that I'm not fully seeing. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair. I think a lot of poker players kind of need to feel that process over results, only because you can sort of lose your mind in this game if you don't adopt some of that, because bad runs and such can happen and feel overwhelming. But I mean, Hellmuth brings some of this on himself, where a grinder kind of doesn't. Love Phil, big respect, all-time legend, of course. But he parades around and says he's the best player in the world, or maybe he's come off of that a little recently. And he gives us a kind of pseudo villain, which is a beautiful thing. Most people can't play that role. I would love to, for fun, to just talk my shit and like get everybody to hate me, like, because I'm a big fight fan. So it doesn't matter.
We need a heel.
I'm not that guy. I'm not the heel. Like, I want to just be normal or whatever. But he'll do it, and it's a part of his thing. And I've seen him rattle a lot of great young players where he's calm out there and they are not.
We had a few heels at this year's World Series. One of them involved one of the most iconic moments of the series, which was you, I don't want to say breaking character, but you, Martin Kabrhel, who is a European fellow that I happen to like a lot, but I've never had to play with him, who is a very good player, but also intentionally as annoying as about any player we've had in the last decade in poker. I don't even remember what he said to you. I just know you responded with, and I quote, oh, go ahead. You know what? Why am I telling the story? No, please. Can you know what I'm talking about here? Can you kind of set the table for what happened there?
Yes. So first of all, me and Martin are cool now. We dapped up at the end of the World Series. It was funny, that night we went to dinner when we went to the French place.
Yeah.
I popped out on the strip and walked back to my car. This is just kind of, most of you guys won't kind of know what I'm talking about, but it's funny because Martin asked me something and I kind of said, what's that, pussy? Kind of like, and I was ready. Like, you want to do something? But that's like, it's for a guy to get me to say that in a 250K buy-in no limit tournament, and I was cool with it because I felt like, he kept fucking with me over and over and over. But that's part of what he does. And I can sit back and be okay with it, you know. I don't want the guy to be barred or anything like that. It's just if you're going to keep asking me to show you my stack, keep like he just kept poking and prodding, and I was like, I was trying to fight in that moment. It's crazy, but that's what happened. But when I was walking to my car, somehow here he is coming out of the horseshoe with his little European friend who looked kind of like gangster. Like they're all sort of like a little bit gangster. Like there's an element to Kabrhel where like, and as you said too, he's a great player. Where Will Kassouf, who, you know, also if for some of you that may have watched the main, Kassouf is another one who's relentless with the table talk and stuff. Much love to Kassouf. He's got skills. Maybe much love is you know, I'm
No,
just
yeah,
throwing that around.
but he's not. Kabrhel's a great player.
Kabrhel's kind of like
Kassouf is
elite,
not a great
kinda,
player.
you know, he's playing really,
right.
really well. So it makes him more annoying to deal with, you know. But I saw him, we dapped up and he said, Nick, finally you'll give me number now, yes? I said, yes, of course. He took my number, he texted me later, hi, which is very kind of on brand. I said, yo. He responded with thumbs up, and that was that. But
okay, so that's what I was going to
right.
ask you because the other not as viral moment was him coming up to you and saying, "I need your number," or "Can I have your number?" and you just flatly saying no.
Look, I'm not going to say I fully trust this guy, but I kind of like him, and I think I'm starting to come around to like kind of being all right with him. You know, I don't know, man. I mean,
I
the game
think
does need
poker
characters.
would be yes, poker would be intolerable if everyone was like him. But I think it's not great if no one is like them. And Kassouf was a different
just
story.
Kind of, not to cut you off, but like it's just sort of life. Like we're not going to start doing a personality contest where if we really don't like somebody, they're out. They have to either cheat or do something scummy and then they're gone. It's all good. Like I'm with that. You know, I have a zero tolerance policy with anything that really threatens the integrity of the game. But if a guy is just super annoying, it's a slippery slope, especially when they're a good player. It's just a slippery slope.
No, I don't even think it's a slippery slope. I think that I personally, and I use this example a lot, and I don't know Alex Foxen very well at all. So I hope if he's heard me use it, he doesn't look at this as a knock at all. It's actually a bit of a compliment because it means I find his stare the most intimidating of all the stares. But if it's totally fine for Alex Foxen to just turn to you and, you know, stare you dead in the face for every second of the shot clock, then it's got to be totally fine for Kabrhel to just be a maniac and talk and whatever. Because to me, it is just fruit from the different, or I'm saying it wrong, but it's the same idea, which is I'm going to do something that's going to rattle you, that's going to get you off your game. One is just way more accepted than the other, but for an amateur, we are really used to a maybe drunk, super annoying, you know, guy at the table, while not used to a former college football tight end who might be the best player in the world just staring through you. Yeah. And so like the Kassouf thing, which is if people saw the clips, his behavior was so bad, people then pivoted to you actually can't be mad at him because something must be wrong with him, right. Which I think probably is correct. Like, I think he had some sort of a breakdown, and that was, were you okay with how much attention he got?
Yeah, yes.
I thought it was a good show. I thought it was like captivating to watch.
I thought it was too. And I'll say just quickly about Foxen and them, you know, I know it's a tricky thing with poker players. We don't really have sponsors. Yep. We don't really get salaries per se. And one of the cool things about poker is it really is real life out there. So a guy like Foxen, what you're seeing is a stone killer of a guy who, and I know you're not knocking him, you're showing love, but that's a stone killer of a guy who's an amazing poker player who, within the confines of the rules, is going to do everything he can to win, and he's comfortable flowing like that. The weird thing about him is like a really sweet guy and actually not brutal to play with until he raises the button and you're in the big blind and you're in the 9 seat and he's in the 6 seat.
Yeah.
If you're not ready for that, that's a lot.
It's a lot, bro.
It's a lot. Same with Chidwick. We've talked about some of these other guys, but end of the day, those are still sort of my favorite players to watch because I know what this life is like. They don't pay us to go to tournaments. We piece out, we take a piece we're comfortable with, and off we go, and it's kind of just like there can be only one winner. It's a zero-sum game. So that's just a little bit of a pushback against the sort of like what's good for poker narratives. But from an observational standpoint, or when the tournament is just unfolding organically, yeah, if a Kassouf is in there deep, rattling the cages of pros, or if Kabrhel is in there doing his thing, asking me to make my stack visible 100 times in a row when I have 8 big blinds and he could see it clearly. Nick, if you make stack visible, I won't ask again. But if I break down and I say, Martin, it's right here. So I just started responding in Russian. I won't let him break me, but obviously he did break me a little bit. And then I got knocked out and he made the final table, just to be clear. But I just won't, because I get emotional. I get flushed in the face. I can get embarrassed. I know myself, but I've also had a lot of altercations over the years where I finally learned how to not sort of show it or just keep it together to breathe. But yeah, like I was okay with the Kassouf coverage, but I also thought maybe it did get a little bit excessive at sometimes. And also you could argue it's not fair for the people at his table to just be on the feature all day. I do like the theory, the concept in theory of randomizing the feature tables because it is a little bit of a disadvantage. It's hot, the lights, whatever. But
well, and people get to see how you play. If you're, you know what I mean.
People see your cards.
I mean that's So that I totally get that.
Long story long, I was okay with it. Yeah.
Before we move on to boxing, just quick hitter ones, real quick. General thoughts on, and if you want, feel free to say pass on any of this. By the way, I leave one chip behind and then I tank for a pay jump.
I love the player that committed that infraction a lot, and he has a serious like moral kind of backbone and stuff, and also said to players at the table, put me on the clock whenever you're ready. I think it speaks more to the flaw in the current structure of tournaments than a player doing that. However, I don't like it. I think it's pretty absurd that it's even a part of tournaments. And we need shot clocks. It's just time for pre-flop shot clocks and in pretty much anything. And, they take enough rake and make enough money to have an executable and well-working clock for any field size. I think it's time.
All right. Then last, I'm going to make you, before we do boxing, talk about yourself just for a second. Can you just take me through finding out you were the one that made the haul this year and what that meant to you?
Yeah, I got a text from Jack Effel, who kind of runs the World Series, or I'm not sure what his exact role is, but he's a bigwig type guy.
VP of something, yeah.
Yeah, he said keep the date ready. Please only tell your immediate friends and family. And I got really emotional. It meant a lot to me. There's definitely a part of me that knows the reason I got in sort of first ballot or my first year of eligibility is my kind of presence in poker as commentating the main and high stakes poker and connecting with some of the fans and just being kind of, or putting a lot of them just straight to sleep, or this guy makes me want to kill myself, or the monotone. But most of them were good. And, so I felt a little bit there's other players that are extremely deserving. You know, I think Ted Forrest should have gotten in a while ago. Seaver is an all-time great. He'll get in, but it was really emotional for me, and I reflected on my whole life, man. It's, you know, this poker life is no joke. You know, I wouldn't want to do anything else, and I'm very grateful for it, but it takes a piece of you you don't get back. And I've definitely gotten more centered as a person, but that thing made me think about some of my darkest times in the game, or when the game got the best of me, or some of the late nights, and honestly some of the huge losses that I've taken, and times I've just busted myself, or crazy stuff along the way. Um, but I felt end of the day, well, I deserved it in the sense that
Yep.
I know what I've put into the game. So it meant a lot to me, and to see my parents and stuff like that, and talk to people I haven't spoken to in a while who were there for me early. It was really emotional for me.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing it. It's been really a thrill for me that you and I have become friends, because I'm such like a poker junkie. Like, I'd listened to you do commentary for years before we ever met. And I'd obviously always heard, you know, great things about you as a guy. But then once we actually got to know each other, it was not only did I want us to be able to work together, but I also wanted there to be more Nick Schulman broadcasting in the world, and not just about poker. And so this is me kind of going a bit off script. This is a message that applies to 99% of you listening right now, because that's how many of you can be covered by fast and reliable service on the Boost mobile network with 99% nationwide coverage. And if you don't think you deserve a deal, listen up. You got another thing coming right now. When you switch to Boost Mobile, you can get iPhone 15 with Dynamic Island and a 48 megapixel main camera for $99.99. That's $99.99 for iPhone 15 on a nationwide 5G network. This may only apply to 99% of you, but I'm 100% positive Boost Mobile just gave all of us a really freaking great deal. In-store offer, $35 device setup fee may apply, requires credit, qualification, ID verification, and activation on $60 plan. Taxes extra, 5G speeds not available in all areas. While Nick refuses to share his boxing bets with me, I figured the best, and by that's not a
Well, no,
selfish thing.
hang on, I'll give my picks. No,
No, no,
okay,
no,
go on.
no. I just no. I think the last time, I think it was a random UFC card, I texted a group chat we're on about something like, who I was at a casino and I hadn't followed it at all. I'm like, who's the pick? And I think the response was, I'm not sharing my picks right now. I appreciate if you respect my family's privacy in this time, because I think you had just lost one. But that's not the point. I was mostly joking. The point is, the level of knowledge and passion for boxing in particular is, in my opinion, neck and neck with where you're at in poker. People just don't know it because you weren't a boxer, you're a poker player. So there's a couple really interesting fights this weekend. There's the Pacquiao fight and there's the Usyk fight in London. I think the Pacquiao fight you're going to be, right at in Vegas, I assume. So let's start there and then go to some other ones. I have not followed this as closely as you, I'm sure. I know there was some line movement in the Pacquiao fight.
All right,
So
hang
give
on a
us,
second.
okay.
Get my glasses on for the boxing. And
Okay.
let's just be clear about something. Like, I'm getting Merry Christmas cards from bookies. Like, I I believe the generational run is coming in the boxing. In MMA, I'm a huge whale. Also diehard. I watch every interview. I watch every fight. Like, I want to chop it up about boxing and really talk about these fights, but this is not, I'm not saying I'm sharp. I'm not saying follow me. TVK was telling me before I came on that I never saw a dog I didn't like. That's a little bit true. That sometimes they dangle a dog in front of me and I just can't take it. We've had our ups and downs, perhaps more downs, although I've caught heat lately in the fight game and it's going to happen. So you could either hop on the train now or keep doubting me.
All right.
You want to go the other way? We could talk, we could chop lines. I'm not short on confidence, but I'm short on results.
Okay. All right. So I'll look at the lines of all these fights, courtesy of our friends at DraftKings, and we'll get to that in a minute. I also want to clarify for the diehard gambling or Vegas audience, whale means big losing better. So when Nick just said I'm a UFC whale, he wasn't saying like I crush UFC betting.
Right.
He means you don't.
At least in my definition, that's right.
Yeah,
It means
you
what you said. Yes.
yeah, you oddly don't want to be a whale. It sounds like something you'd want to be. You don't want. I guess it's nice to be able have the ability to be a whale because it means you have the money, but you don't really want to be a whale because okay. So with all that said, Nick's real concern is, and I'm just going to tell the audience, he is not a tout and does not want to be anyone to think he's being a tout. What he is giving, his boxing analysis that, like you said, the heater of a lifetime is coming, and they're going to build a statue outside the arena. It's going to happen. We know it. Let's start with Pacquiao Barrios.
Okay. So Pacquiao, if I may, I got plus 410-ish a while ago. I was walking through the Aria. I was in the sports book, and
Never
there
met
he
a dog you
was.
don't like.
Manny Pacquiao plus 410 against Mario Barrios. Is he 46? Yes. Is he coming back just for the money? We don't know. I believe in him. I've now watched every interview and stuff, and I'm starting to believe vintage Pac-Man might show up. And by the way, the line has moved to roughly 240. We have to be happy crushing the closing line. One
Yeah.
specialty of mine is in the MMA is beat the line and just still lose. That one I'm amazing at. And also I could get bad lines and also still lose. It's a very interesting fight, when you think in boxing of older fighters, you think of George Foreman and Bernard Hopkins, who both did magical things in their mid to late 40s. We've never really seen a little guy who relied on blistering speed and combinations and footwork come back in their mid 40s and make it happen. But Pacquiao's Filipino, and one thing I know about these Filipino guys from the pool room, man, not to generalize a whole
Sure.
nation, but they just have a lot of hustle. This guy's razor sharp. He plays a little poker himself, by the way. He's a good chess player. He's actually a great pool player. I mean, every Filipino guy kind of is, but I believe he might have game planned. He might have known something about Barrios' style. He's a little flat-footed. Maybe he can get in and out and have a vintage night, and it would be a pretty special night, a la the grinder,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're rooting for Pacquiao because you bet him. Also, how much of that line movement was your bet by itself? Possibly some of it.
Not too much. Don't get me wrong. We have a position, but nothing crazy.
But you think he has more than a puncher's chance? You think he has a real chance? And
I
for
think
people
there's
that
a chance he stone out classism, boxes his ears off, and makes it look easy. I also think it could be a tragic night where it looks like he came back for the money and he's just stuck in the mud and gets hurt bad. That's possible.
And is there anything for the audience that hasn't seen Barrios, like what type of fighter he is, like what you expect from him?
He has a stiff jab. He's not the quickest guy, but he has heavy hands, and he's been in there with a lot of good guys. He's won most of his fights. He's a real champion through and through, and he's a kind of he's a Mexican from San Antonio, and a lot of people talk about these Mexicans like they're just willing to die in there and this and that, but he really seems like he is kind of, tons of heart, big nuts, like great fighter, but vintage Pac-Man would wash him. Everybody knows it. No disrespect, could be wrong, but we're talking about an 8 division world champion, all-time great who, vintage Pac was one of the greatest fighters of all time. So if that guy shows up, It could be a quick night. People are saying it like people are acting like they're rolling your grandfather out to get out with the cane. This is Manny Pacquiao, man. He's been in the gym. What this is what I start doing, and we know where
This is why
we know where this
TBK
is going.
says you like all the dogs. All right, let's talk a little of the undercards, and then we'll get to Usyk. Hand up on me on this one. I know nothing about this fight. Fedora Sizu? I don't even know how to say the name.
Tim Zhu, son of
Zhu. Okay.
Zhu. The first fight was interesting. Fundora won a decision, but Zhu got a gash on his forehead that like he looked like one of the zombies from The Walking Dead after round 2. It's actually crazy Fundora didn't get him out of there. Tim is a small favorite this one. He suffered a brutal stoppage loss to this Eastern European whose name is brutal, but
it was a bad stoppage.
He suffered a bad stoppage, and Fundora also basically got starched out cold by Brian Mendoza in the center of the ring with just a beautiful left hook. They've both bounced back. I like Zhu. I think Zhu is going to just find a way. To me, Fundora, as great as he is, they call him the Towering Inferno. They don't weigh that much, but he's like 6'6". Like, it's kind of freaky. To me, he just sort of doesn't have a second gear, but he's great. Where I feel Tim has just that second gear, I think he's going to bite down on the mouthpiece and get it done. And I really hope he does, Nick, if you catch my drift.
All right. So, all right. I like that. All right, so there's so what's the Pitbull Fierro we want to talk? Or the
Fierro pulled out.
Yeah,
we don't know what they said. Medical emergency, so Pitbull is going to be a massive favorite, and he's a cool fighter.
So so that one's just gone. Oh, did that just happen?
Yeah, a little while ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Omar Salcido.
Yeah, he was on the undercard, and Pitbull's probably a 20-1 favorite or something. Gun to head, I'd lay it, but I don't like those that much.
Well, I'm hold on. I'm just telling you right now. Again,
go on. What is the line,
I mean, at DK right now, you can get Cruz. Wait, is that who he's fighting? Hold on. Do I have it wrong?
Salcido?
No, Omar Salcido against Isaac Cruz. Is this what we're talking? Yeah.
I believe it's Isak Cruz.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Isak Cruz minus 1,100.
So 11-1. I mean, that
you can
sounds
just add that to your other ones.
One thing I believe in the fight game in general is that all these young guys are all evolving. They can evolve quicker between fights, in my opinion, than the old days, because there's just such an influx of content and things to watch, so on and so forth. You see it in poker too sometimes. A kid will just reinvent himself out of nowhere. Where back in the day, you know what I'm saying? Like the world sort of moves faster. So these huge favorites, I'm a little bit skittish, but Pitbull's going to win. He's probably going to stop him. I mean, but I'm not betting that fight.
Okay. All right. Let's go to London. Usyk against, again, is it Dubois? Dubois. Usyk is, at least on DK, 3-1 favorite. Dubois right around plus 250. What's your thoughts on that?
So it feels like they kind of got that line right, like they often do. Dubois has really reinvented himself. Masterful stoppage of Anthony Joshua. Heavy hands. This is a rematch where there was a little bit of controversy. Usyk got hit kind of on the belt line. From one angle, it looked low. From the other, it looked legal. And he went down, and he was kind of acting like he was really hurt and got a long count after it was ruled a low blow. Personally, I feel he was okay and was just kind of doing weird gamesmanship, and I don't really know. I've watched it multiple times. My general rule is keep betting on generational talent that's undefeated. So gun to head, I would bet Usyk, and I probably will be taking some lazy price last minute and pacing around the living room. But I don't. If that fight's in London and you're in Vegas,
That's an early afternoon sweat before
That's
you
early
head to your
afternoon. It's a
fight.
great day. We got Usyk afternoon, and then we're pulling up to the Grand Garden Arena, baby, for to watch Pacquiao, to watch 72-year-old Pacquiao get out there.
What a Saturday. It makes
Yeah,
me wish I'd stayed in
yeah.
Vegas for another couple
And I think
days.
Poirier Holloway is on tomorrow, MMA, so we might have the phone going. It's all happening.
Do you have anything you want to say about Poirier? I know we've been talking
I've
about the
I've uh,
Poirier
I've,
fight.
I've 86'd myself from even allowing my mind to generate opinions on MMA, but I'll
Okay.
watch and I might get wrapped in, but I just
All right. One more boxing question before we go. But to be
I
clear,
like Poirier though.
okay.
Never
All right,
mind, never mind.
so you like Pacquiao? Who did you say in the Tim Tszyu fight?
He's fighting Fundora. I like
No,
Tim Tszyu.
that's
I
what I
like Tim
thought. That
Tszyu.
so Pacquiao and Tszyu you like?
And again, I like Pacquiao at that price I got.
Yes.
I still could see youth prevailing in the whole thing, but that plus 400 was we knew that wasn't going to last.
Right. So you got it at a sharp price because right now, for our audience has to be even more confident than you were because right now you got it basically double. It's right now right around plus 210. Barrios is minus 275. Listen, I'm not a professional gambler. You're a professional poker player and gambler. Some would say you have the perfect hedge opportunity at minus 275. I say if I wanted to hedge bets, I would be a stockbroker instead of what I am. I'm out here to gamble, but I have a regular income stream. But I guess
I'm
you do
more,
too.
yeah, I'm more of the bet more type. I don't like the hedging. I have a friend who's a master of the hedging and the arbitraging, and I get it, but it's such a grind, and I'm just not organized enough to even execute. I'm a one and done. I see a
Yeah.
line I like and I fire.
All right. Couple minutes before we go on 2 months from now in Vegas at Raiders Stadium. I mean, it's gonna like a massive place for a boxing event. Canelo Crawford.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back and forth on this one. On the one hand, you cannot see Bud in the ring with somewhat prime Triple G, Dmitry Bivol, despite the fact that Canelo lost. Even Kovalev, even alcoholic old Kovalev was still, 6'1", big. You can't see Bud in there with those guys. Bud got rocked by Yuriorkis Gamboa, who's, my wife is bigger than him. I mean, really, like, but you do see guys move up in weight and fill out. Um, Canelo has looked not as good lately. His last performance, I actually rewatched it, even though it's the most boring fight of all time, against William Skull. I feel he sort of just didn't try. Like he knew he'd get the decision, and just this guy was running around the ring. And Canelo was just kind of lead hand down, just sort of. People were saying he can't cut the ring off anymore. I'm not sure about all that. He was just cashing checks and doing just enough, maybe. If Bud stands in the pocket with him and trades, I could see Bud getting hurt. He didn't look amazing at 154 against Madrimov, but he did get the job done. And that guy's quality. And I don't know if I should say, I feel like I shouldn't say this, but I'm just going to say it. Uh, Phil Ivey likes Bud, and it isn't like he's just riding with Bud because they're cut from the same cloth, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He'll bet whoever he likes. He's not just rocking with Bud out of love. He is a ruthless sports bettor, and his position is that we have the GOAT on our hands. He believes Bud is perhaps just the GOAT. And that kind of hit me because we always talk about the fights for real, and he's Razor, but also he could sail too, and doesn't get them all right. Don't get me wrong. But he said, yeah, he's like, and he knows a lot of people in boxing. A lot of his family are in boxing gyms, or for real, like he's just juiced in with a lot of guys, his teams and stuff. Phil could walk into any boxing gym in America and get immediate love from people he just knows. He said his people believe that Terrence Crawford is, we're not going to put him above Ali or whatever, but going to go down as one of the five greatest fighters of all time, and he's that good. So I
Wow.
was Canelo all day due to you just cannot break the rules like this and move up 2 weight classes from a weight class that's already too big for you. Kind of. I mean, he sort of
Yeah.
matured into 54, but after Ivy said that to me, apologies, Phil, if I hope he doesn't see this, or yeah, I would never give his plays away, but this one I'm just too excited about. After he said that to me, now I might just rock with Bud because I love him anyway. Bud against Errol Spence was the biggest sports bet I ever had. I had Terrence Crawford. I just believed he's just too good,
The
and
biggest sports bet you ever had?
yes,
Wow. That's a
yes,
big bet.
yes. It wasn't actually that. I fire bigger in the poker. When I say that,
No,
you'd
of
be
course.
surprised. Don't get me
No, but
wrong. It was a
no,
real
listen,
number, but it
again,
wasn't
hold on.
like
Here's the deal. Your mind is warped by what a big bet is and what isn't by the fact that you're hanging out with Ivy and with guys who
true,
are
true
who are just
facts. True.
firing, and also guys, not just Ivy, but guys who might put.
One time, Ivy gave me 10% of him in a craps roll. He said, just take 10% for luck, Nick. I said, all right, cool. He came up to me later, told him I owed him 85,000. It was a long time ago, man. You know what I mean? I did not see that one coming. I told him, Phil, I'm gonna need a minute on that one.
That's true story.
No, that's real, yeah.
You
He
didn't, so
was
you had
getting
10% of him and you didn't stay and sweat it?
No, we were in a tournament and it was all love, and he would never ever give a wrong number. It
No,
all.
no, I didn't mean sweat it
No,
like
no,
you
I know,
thought.
I
No,
know,
no, no,
but I'm
no.
saying no, no. It was just one of those things. We were hanging out, and he put me on for 10, and at 85 times 10 I mean, it was a big loss. I didn't see all that
the,
coming.
I actually had heard you. I think you told that story once before, so I didn't remember the number. I knew that happened, but just because in case he is a little mad at you giving out his pick, you have to tell one other story that makes him sound so incredibly cool, which is when you got the massage and didn't have.
Yeah, I was getting a massage in a poker tournament. I had no cash on me. He was at the table, and I said, Phil, can I borrow a little bit to pay for the massage? He said, I got it, Nick. And he reached in his pocket, gave her a 5K Bellagio chip. He said, here you go, honey. We're at 5, Nick. No rush. 5.
It's just so good.
Legend. All-time legend.
He tips the masseuse 5,000 that
5G.
you then have to pay.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right, couldn't have ended better. Here's the thing. He's Nick Schulman, he's a poker Hall of Famer, just won his 7th bracelet. You can hear him on High Stakes Poker. You can hear him at the World Series of Poker on Poker Go. You hopefully can hear him do more boxing stuff on this podcast and in other places as well soon. The only thing I need from you, Nick, is for you to sleep on whether or not one of the social media breakout clips can be Phil Ivey thinks Terrence Crawford can be the GOAT. Because I'm telling you, that will do well on the internet. You don't have to decide now because you got to.
Well, I gotta ask him. He's so
Yes.
sneaky. He's probably trying to bet Crawford. I really fucked up here, but it's all good. It is
No.
what it is. He knows I make mistakes. I'm emotional, but this guy is moving different. He's not worried about no social media clips. You know what I'm saying? So I think probably we gotta lay off that. But love you, man. Thank you so much for having me on, dude. This was a
No.
blast. And
You're the
yeah,
best. Go enjoy time with your daughter, who I'm sure is now home from school. And I'll see you back. I'm back in Vegas in a couple weeks, so I'll see you then.
amazing.
Later on, Nick.
I'll see you
Later,
soon.
bro. Bye.
Later.